Hello there. Welcome to the release party of, we'll call it a release party, why not? Welcome to the release party of my 13th published novel, Nightshade Station. Got a lot to talk about with this book. This book gave me a heart attack. Not literally, but yeah. I will discuss what the book is about, of course. I will go over the characters and the journey that it took me to write it, which is probably what I'm going to lead off with because that was the doozy. That's what gave me a heart attack. Um, just for a heads up, I am of course streaming live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So I am going to do my best to look at both cameras. So bear with me if at times it seems like I'm going back and forth. I'm just doing the best I can. Unfortunately, the app that I use here, I don't think it does allow me to use Instagram, but I have to insert a key, and it's just annoying. So it's just better for me to stream straight from Instagram right here. So we are live. I am coming to you live from again from YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Uh, I am of course talking to myself at the moment, but I do hope that some people will be joining me. I am going to be going live again tonight, well, this evening. I'm going to be going live again this evening at 7 o'clock. So for the people that can't watch this one, perhaps they can tune in at 7. But I am hoping that some people will come by, certain people that I can introduce to you because they have a connection to the book. But again, I'm not going to spoil anything. That's only if they show up. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Nightshade Station. So, Nightshade Station has a very interesting story of not the story itself, but it has a very interesting story of how I decided to write it, why I decided to write it. So, for those that don't know, I tend to come up with book titles randomly off the top of my head before I come up with an actual story. This isn't always the case, but it happens more times than I'd like to think. And it's because of this that it's both a gift because, hey, it gives me a new story, a new book to write. And it's a curse because it's like, okay, this is an excellent title. But, brain, what do you want me to do with this title? I want you to make a book out of it. But I need a storyline, I need a plot. That's for you to decide. But you're my brain, you're supposed to help me. No, no, no. So, I'm about to spoil a little something for you. Did you know, fun fact, that I have my next 20 books planned out, title wise anyway? Isn't that nuts? Is that psychopathic book author mentality? Probably. Does anybody else do that? Just me. um, so I have a lot of titles. A lot of titles will come to me, and it'll be such a good title that I'll just add it to my list of books that I plan on writing. Now, they get written in the order in which they appear on the list. You guys remember my steampunk book of Gears and Gaslight? It was kind of like that. I had two stories, boom. Eventually, when it became its time, it was on the list, and I was like, okay, I'm going to write this now. Nightshade Station is technically what I refer to as a pop-up book. No, it's not the books that you read to your kids that have the little pop-up things. No. I need a new term for this, but unless somebody can give me a new title, I'm going to go with this. When I say pop-up book, it means it's a book it's a book idea that I've come up with that's so good that it just kind of pops up out of nowhere. It skips the line. I have written two books like this. The first book that I ever wrote that was a pop-up book where the idea just kind of popped up out of nowhere was the short story Emporium. I had written bunch of short stories, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do with these? I'll make a book out of them. But I was in the middle of the Wax Factory series, and I was like, I can't just throw this book and publish it I can't just throw it into the fire and just publish it. There was no rule against it. I was only conflicting with myself, and even then I was like, well, technically it looks good on your resume, Justin. It just means you're hustling, you're getting them books out. The next one was, of course, the macabre masterpiece, Vile Humanity. If you remember, back in 2021, my mother and I, we lost our house because of a fire, and we had to stay in a motel for 3 months. I couldn't really promote my book, so I was like, you know what? I can write a book of poetry on my phone, which is exactly what I did. Hence, second pop-up book. So where is this all leading, Justin? Well, Nightshade Station is technically was supposed to be a pop-up book. It was supposed to be. It kind of just came out of nowhere. I thought of the title one day because for some reason I like the word Nightshade. It looks cool when it's written down. It sounds cool. I don't know. I'm weird like that. But I thought of this title called Nightshade Station. And I loved it so much that I'm like, you know what? I need to write a book with this title. I added it to the list. But where I put it wasn't on the bottom of the list. Because I thought to myself, I'm going to make this a pop-up book. Furthermore, Nightshade Station was supposed to be a perma-free book on Amazon. What that means is it was supposed to be permanently free. Fun fact, Brimstone Express was supposed to be permanently free. So before Nightshade Station was even a thought, Brimstone Express was supposed to be free. But once I came up with the plot and the storyline, the main character in Kiro Dusk, and I came up with the hook, I was like, there's no way I'm making Brimstone Express free. So then came Nightshade Station. So I was like, all right, since I'm not going to make Brimstone Express free, I will make Nightshade Station free. And for the longest time, it looked like Nightshade Station was going to be that perma-free book that I would write. That would help me build an email list and carry me through and get me some great downloads so I could brag about being number 1 in 3 categories on Amazon. But my brain was not going to have that, was it? Because I think of other titles. And eventually, I thought of a storyline for Nightshade Station. And as an author, for any author who knows, when you come up with a really good storyline and you decide, like, hey, I'm going to make my book free, but then you come up with a storyline after, you're like, I'm not going to give that away for free. That's not happening. That's just not happening. So I came up with great characters, this great plot, and then what was supposed to be my pop-up book, the idea that came out of nowhere that was going to be permanently free, was now suddenly the second book that I scrapped that was perma-free. And Nightshade Station became book number 13. So it skipped a line, thinking it was going to get preferential treatment, only it just skipped a line and got treatment. It didn't get any other perks that other books got, right? So Nightshade Station, we have arrived, right? The subway has arrived, all aboard. What genre is it, Justin? That's what I want to know. Is it a crime thriller or is it a horror? Yes. If you ask me, 9 times out of 10, I will tell you that it's a crime thriller / horror. I write psychological horror, and this I would consider a psychological crime thriller / horror. And the first thing outside of the title, of course, after that came the storyline. I thought of this great idea in my head. The wheels were turning. I got working on it. but I needed character names before I could even start writing them, right? Am I picky with my names? No. Where do I get my names and ideas for characters? That depends. Most of the time, I can just pick them off the top of my head. Other times, I'll be watching a show or a movie and I'll hear someone's name and I'll be like, oh, that would make a great character from one of my books. Declan Colville, ladies and gentlemen, is the main character of Nightshade Station. This was not the first choice. I had given my friends on Facebook a choice of 4 names. 2 people voted, and it was 50-50. And I didn't like either one, because that's what I do. I change my mind. I'm indecisive, sue me. Originally, for some reason, the name Colville just stuck out at me, right? And originally, it was Derek Colville, which kind of sounds like a former 90s NFL player. But then I decided to go with Declan. I don't know. I was thinking like Blade Runner, like Declan, I think. I don't know. Again, my mind, when I'm thinking of ideas, it just stops. So I came up with Declan Colville, and I was like, sold. He's the main character. Then, of course, I had to think of other characters. Now, for this book, is there a lot of characters in it? Yes and no. Justin, can you stop doing this? That's what you're probably thinking, right? To be fair, like in story, full depth characters, there's probably 4. Declan Colville, the main character, Aaron Harden, his partner. They're both detectives, obviously. They're police detectives for the Atlantic City Police Department. The book takes place in Atlantic City. I probably should have specified that. Police Chief Donald Waldron is number 3, although him and Colville are probably the 1 and 2. Then I would say Aaron Harden. And then 4 is Declan's girlfriend, Selena Gamber. So those are like the 4 like main characters that you actually see throughout the book, right? Every character after that is kind of a sub character, meaning, do they have a point in the story? Oh, excuse me. Yes, of course they do, but they're sub characters. They help develop the plot and they're a part of the storyline, but we don't really talk about them too much. They give what they bring and give to the story, but they are what they are. So let me introduce you to the characters once again, and I will introduce all the characters. We'll give a nice little rundown, right? Declan Colville, Atlantic City police detective. He is 31 or 32, I believe. It says it in the first couple pages. He has been an Atlantic City police detective for over 5 years, and Colville is, which you will come to find out if you read the book, or you can just read the back and find out, he's not like most police detectives. He's got a keen sense of hindsight, and he's got a second sense. In other words, he can look at a crime scene. I would compare him to Sherlock Holmes. It's the best thing I can do. He can look at a crime scene and he can see things that other detectives or other people that are there at the crime scene just won't see or even consider. And I think you've probably seen people like this in crime shows, right? Sherlock, they redid that. The Mentalist, I would also say he's not to that degree, but he kind of has that mentalist mentality where like he'll look at it and he'll make a point, and the other detectives will look at like, what are you talking about? Where do you see that? How did you even get that from that body? And then he'll just lay it down. He'll just lay it all out there, and then the person's just like, wow, that's amazing. How do you do that? Declan Colville, is a police detective, so he doesn't have a lot of time to himself. The reason I bring this up is because I had someone beta read the book, and I listed his hobbies in this book, and they circled it, and they said, "Is this necessary? This seems unnecessary." And it's like, well, you're the one who is familiar with medical and police. That's the reason that you decided to read my book. So you should know that police detectives have hectic schedules. A lot weighs on their shoulders, which means that if they can have any hobby or any time to themselves, they're going to do it. They're going to have a hobby. Declan Colville happens to have three. I made him a normal human being, but at the same time, I also gave him a life outside of the precinct. Um, the next character is Donald Waldron. He is the police commissioner. Donald Waldron is a very interesting character because it is because of him that I'm just going to come out and say it. I was allowed to freely swear in this book more times than I have ever had swears in any book. So imagine that fiery, feisty, old school police detective. Police chief, that if you're on his good side, you have nothing to worry about. So Colville usually has nothing to worry about. But when you have a strange case like Nightshade Station and other incompetent detectives, chances are your police chief is going to be swearing like a sailor, like a trooper, whatever person you want to put in there, right? And it wasn't done intentionally, not at first. The first swear just kind of happened, and I rolled with it. Then the second and the third, then the fourth and the fifth. And then by like 5 chapters in, I was like, I've already had this man swear more times than any character in any book that I've ever written. Am I ashamed? A little bit. But at the same time, I was also happy because I'm like, I'm giving this guy character. Like I'm making him stand out, which I loved. So, but because even though he swears like a trooper, um, I feel like most people when they read about Chief Donald Waldron, they'll feel like he's like a kind of like a loving father in a way. At least you see that with the way he interacts with Colville. The next character is Detective Aaron Harden. He is Declan's partner. They have been partners for a few years, although despite being partners for a few years, Declan feels like he doesn't really know his partner that well. Harden is married. Colville is not. Harden is he's kind of like the Watson to Colville, like Watson and Sherlock Holmes, except for the fact that a lot of times Harden will just be like, "Okay, let's go with that, Declan. I trust you. I don't see what you're seeing, but let's do it." Right? He's just like the guy that will throw in the 2 cents to clear things up. Like if they're at a crime scene and a guy is like, "Okay, can you explain the crime scene for me?" And then Declan Colville goes first, and the guy's just like, "Huh?" Basically, Harden steps in and tells him in English, so to speak, basic terms, to where the guy will be like, "Oh, that's what he meant." So yeah, so they're Aaron Harden is his partner. They've been partners for a few years. They have a good relationship, right? They really they mesh well together. The next character is Jordan Kipton. And Jordan Kipton was originally a character name that I considered for the main character. But after I went with Declan Colville, I'm like, I want to make Jordan Kipton another character, right? He's also a police detective. And remember what I said about um, Police Chief Donald Waldron having inept detectives on his squad? This is who I was referring to. Jordan Kipton, again, I'm not going to give away too much like I haven't already. Jordan Kipton is a dick, to put it lightly. To put it lightly, he's an absolute dick. You will see his interactions with Koval throughout the book, and it'll make you want to punch him, because this is the type of guy he is, right? This is the type of guy he is. Kipton, what does he bring to the book as a character? He's that character that you love to hate, right? Right away. And eventually down the road in the book, if you're about 3/4 of the way done through the book, if you want to like him, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. If you want to continue to hate him, I'm also not going to care. Doesn't matter to me, right? That's how I was writing him. Like, I hated him, but at the same time, I'm like, I love that I made him so hateful. Like, I love that I made him that you can hate him. The next character is Selena Gamber, who is Declan's girlfriend. We don't see her until, I believe, midway through the book. She's referenced, right? And Selena Gamber is the character, of course, that keeps Declan on his toes. Without Selena, Declan would probably spiral out of control, because this Nightshade Station case is just so overwhelming. So he turns to Selena as his crutch. And basically, when I wrote the character at first, I originally intended to only have her in like 3 chapters. But then I realized, if he's going to spiral out of control, or at worst need someone, it's going to look kind of weird to introduce his girlfriend as a character, and then for him to just be like chilling at home all by himself, just twiddling his fingers, like, it doesn't make sense. So I added more of Selena, and she basically is his support throughout the book. And chapter 10 and 11, chapters 10 and 11 take place in Miami, because Selena asks Declan, hey, we should go to vacationing in Miami. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So they go to Miami, and this is where we kind of see the most of Selena's character. Because prior to that, she's just kind of she's always a subplot character there. But for the most part, she's, we see her develop as a character in these 2 chapters that take place in Miami. The next character is Glenn Napier. Glenn Napier, I don't even know if you can consider him a character, because he's never in the book. What do I mean by that? I don't know the specific term, but he's the type of character that is referenced throughout the book constantly. Though you never see him he never has dialogue, but other characters talk about him. I'm not going to get into too much, or even at all, about who he is, but you will find out if you in fact read the book. Then, of course, we have 2 other subpar small characters. We have Miles, the ticket attendant that works at Nightshade Station. I think it's only fitting to mention this young man because he works at Nightshade Station, which is the name of the book. He works at this gloomy, crazy hellhole that is Nightshade Station. And, of course, Declan and Aaron Harden have to talk to him. So, and you'll find out Miles is a fun, jolly character. And then we finally have Ariana, the subway artist. And she's a girl who Declan notices from across the subway station and feels like she knows something. And they kind of develop a friendship. And she's painting a sunset. And basically, he kind of like learns a little bit about the people that the victims of Nightshade Station, which I haven't even mentioned yet, by the way, and I'm already a half an hour in. So yeah, he learns from Ariana about what happens to some of the what happened. He learns about who some of the characters are, the victims, and he learns about Miles a little bit while developing this friendship with Ariana. So what is Nightshade Station about, Justin? How about you should have just let off with that. Sorry. I'm excited. Sue me. So Nightshade Station, in a complete sentence nutshell, is about a police detective named Declan Coville who has to solve a series of unexplained deaths at a gloomy, creepy subway station. Nightshade Station. So the first thing that happens in the book, and I can tell you this because this is what starts everything, right? Chain reaction, chain of events. 3 people jump to their death off the yellow platform of Nightshade Station. 3 bodies lie dead on the subway tracks. More bloodshed and death follow. Can a detective solve this mystery, or will it become a cold case? Declan Coville is a bright young investigator with a keen sense and hindsight. However, when he arrives on the scene, his ability to understand the situation is replaced with shocking uncertainty in a series of shocking events. Perplexed and running out of time, he's determined to come to a deduction of the motive no matter what it takes. With a lack of clues in each passing moment becoming more gloomier by the minute, he must solve the case before more people end up dead. What is happening at Nightshade Station? Fun little fact, I'm the only person on the planet that will have this back cover because I changed it at the last possible minute. Then I ordered a copy of this book thinking, hey, I can still get this back cover, right? The woman on Amazon told me, no, probably not. So I have this back cover now, this text. I changed the text a little bit. It sounds better. But it still fits. That's Nightshade Station in a nutshell, right? Got to solve a series of murders. So, got to solve a series of unexplained deaths. Are they deaths? Are they murders? Are they suicides? I don't know. They could be any one of those things. You'll have to read the book and find out for yourself. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which I probably should have led off with, in fact, I'll probably lead off with it when I do the second video at 7 o'clock, is how this book almost gave me a heart attack. So I started writing this back in November. The holidays happened in December, Christmas, but I still did my writing. January, February. By the time February rolled around, I was kind of like, my computer had crashed in November, by the way. Didn't seem like it was that long, but it did. My computer crashed, so I had to use my tablet. So I finished the book on my tablet. Still needing a new computer. And I saved Nightshade Station to a USB drive. Never thinking for any reason whatsoever that I could lose it. Yeah. One day I plugged the USB in, scrolled down to the ends, because it's in alphabetical order, and Nightshade Station's chapters were nowhere to be found. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Plugged it back in. Nothing. I start freaking out. I'm mad. I'm sad. Like, I'm just every emotion you can think of, right? I'm scrolling through my entire tablet. Mind you, if you unplug the tablet, there's not many files in my tablet to begin with. Couldn't find it. Took it to Best Buy. Took the USB. They're like, we can't find out what's wrong. The files might be corrupted. So then I try to take the computer down. They can't help me with the computer. Computer's dead. Gonna need a new one. So I came home, and anybody that knows, I know you know, Daniela. Basically, I had to write Nightshade Station from scratch all over again. And I had two options. I could decide to write the book again, or I could just be like, screw it. But I was going to say screw it. Like, I worked hard. I spent 4 to 5 months writing this thing. The only way I could write it was right then and there, because it was still fresh in my mind. There was a lot of characters. There was plenty of storyline. There was plenty of description. There was plenty of scenarios, all still in my head. So I had to write it again. So I did. 2 days, no, not 2 days, excuse me, 2 weeks, 7 hours, and 2 days later, I'm not kidding, I memorized that. I finished the book. Is that realistic? Is that healthy? Probably not. I don't recommend writing a book in 2 weeks. The only reason I was even able to do it is because all of it was still in my head. If it wasn't, it probably would have taken me way longer. Now, naturally, I imagine people might be like, "Oh, well, doesn't that mean the book was how messy was the book afterwards?" Pretty messy. I mean, that beta reader chewed me a new one. Like, we conflicted. I was reading a lot of the stuff that she said, and I disagreed with it, but at the same time, I also agreed with it. But the structure, the storyline, a lot of the stuff that I originally had was right back in it, which wouldn't have been possible had I waited any longer. If I had let time pass, I wouldn't have been able to write it again. So I'm thankful. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for being able to remember most of the stuff that I put in the book from the first time. And it was because of my determination and because I loved the idea of this book so much that I was able to write it again. So it has been an absolute journey and a half to write this damn book. And remember what I said at the beginning of the video about it being originally being a perma-free idea? Well, guess what? Nightshade Station is now officially my longest book at 370 pages. Because if anybody knows me, I'm not like Stephen King. I don't write Bibles, you know. I don't write blasphemous Bibles with God knows what inside of them. And yeah, most of my books are probably between 200, 270. When I checked the page count for this, I saw that it was 370. Do you know how much the Wax Factory is? 270. It's 100 pages more than the Wax Factory. So yeah, the next thing I want to talk about and discuss is the setting. Why Atlantic City? Why didn't you create your own city like you usually do? Well, I wanted to change. It was a crime thriller, so I was like, I usually just create my own Western town when I'm writing Western horrors. And, well, the Wax Factory's not a Western horror, it's a horror, and I created this. I don't know. I just felt like using a real city. Once again, I asked people, and oddly enough, a woman that follows me on Twitter gave me the recommendation of Atlantic City when she actually gave me 2 ideas of things that are in Atlantic City that pertain to horror. So that kind of helped me with my decision. The other possibilities were New Orleans, Seattle, Memphis. I don't know crap about Memphis. It just sounds like it's a cool music city, I guess. Seattle's gloomy, as I'm sure you can attest for. And but it's like, how many books have you ever read that actually take place in Seattle? None of them. I've never come across a book that takes place in Seattle, which isn't to say that there aren't any out there, but like, so then I thought maybe New Orleans, but New Orleans is like a behemoth. Like, you really have to make the decision. Like, hey, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna set it in New Orleans. So that really just left Atlantic City. So when that woman on Twitter was like, hey, I'm gonna give you some ideas, I'm like, okay. So um I didn't know crap about Atlantic City because I've never been there. But I tried to talk to people who have, and they didn't really give me much aside from that woman, right? So I did a little research, had a little fun with it. So it was because of this that obviously the Atlantic City Boardwalk is a big, pivotal part of the city. There's a whole chapter that takes place on the boardwalk. Also, because Nightshade Station was supposed to be permanently free, I thought maybe I can get my perma-free book out of this. So, the other book that is actually being released today is called Blood on the Boardwalk. It takes place on the Atlantic City Boardwalk. It's Declan Coville, and he is on the boardwalk hunting a mythical creature. Do I want to spoil it, or do you want to figure it out if you don't know? Basically, I finally decided that if Nightshade Station was going to be permanently free, then surely a book that comes from it has to be, right? Yes. Although, as I talk right at this very moment, Blood on the Boardwalk is not permanently free because it is on Draft to Digital. If you want a free copy, go on Draft to Digital, type in Blood on the Boardwalk, it'll pop up and you can get a free copy. It's not free on Amazon yet. And I don't know if I can make it permanently free on Amazon without them giving me crap about it. I've never done it before, so we're gonna see. We're gonna see how this goes. So, Nightshade Station, this is the main book. Blood on the Boardwalk is a complimentary short story that goes with it, that it will be permanently free. It is only available on Kindle, PDF as well, but you get the idea. It will not be available for paperback. It could be. It's over 80 pages, so it would actually work. But unless I get a massive following of people that love Nightshade Station and demand that books in paperback, which is not happening, it's staying as a Kindle. Let me go over one thing I like to do is I like to go over the quotes that I use in the book. Now, fun little story. When I wrote my first book, The Macabre Masterpiece, I kind of just like immediately was like, I'm going to throw in quotes from Edgar Allan Poe because that's fitting. Rod Serling, I love The Twilight Zone. Stephen King because he's the best horror author of all time, or so I've heard. But then the more books that I wrote, the more I realized that I wanted to either stay with what I didn't want to just quote another horror author. I wanted the quotes to have meaning based off of the book. How many authors do that? I don't know. Also, I would always go with that. Talking so much. I was always under the impression that you could only put one quote in, right? I would always see one quote. Excuse me a moment. I was always led to believe that you can only put one quote in a book. And then I was downstairs in my basement one time and came across my mom's book, box of books. And I picked up a Dean Koontz book that she had. Dean Koontz had like 7 quotes just on one page. And I was like, are these his quotes? Can you do this? Nothing says you can't. I've never put 7 quotes in my book, but I have included 3 or 4, which is the case here. A fool's paradise is a wise man's hell. Thomas Fuller. That's one of my favorite quotes all time. It's fitting, and these are all fitting to the book in their own weird way. Experience is not what happens to a man. It's what a man does with what happens to him. Aldous Huxley. I believe that's actually the second Aldous Huxley quote I've ever used, which is weird because most people don't know who the hell that guy is. It is very dangerous to go into eternity with possibilities which one has oneself prevented from becoming realities. A possibility is a hint from God. Soren Kierkegaard. We even got a philosopher's quote in there, right? This book's got it all. Okay. One thing I will now do, yeah, I believe I can do that. I'm going to be reading the first few pages of Nightshade Station. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go with the first 5 pages because there is a particular scene on page 5 that I want to read out loud so that people can appreciate it. And hopefully it'll entice them to buy the book. Aside from me talking about it right now and having it out. 3 people jumped to their deaths off the subway platform of Nightshade Station. The site had turned from normal to an absolute catastrophe in a matter of seconds. Everyone that had witnessed it was in a state of shock. One man called onto the scene was Atlantic City Detective Declan Cova. While he was used to being called into countless amounts of crazy crime scenes, he had no idea just how crazy and strange this one would be. Declan Cova was unlike most detectives because he had a keen sense of hindsight. In the way he could read people or examine a crime scene was something straight out of a Sherlock Holmes novel. His perception, of seeing things different made it easier for him to evaluate and eliminate evidence. When Koval arrived on the scene and looked around, he knew he was in for one rude awakening. There were about a dozen people who had witnessed what happened, but what he also already knew was that this was not everyone who had seen something. He had a feeling some people, despite having witnessed such a horrific scene, took off not wanting to talk or explain what they had seen. While he didn't blame them, taking off during this crime scene was still a despicable thing to do. Declan Koval is 32 years old with brown hair and blondish hair and blue eyes. He had been with the Atlantic City Police Department, ACPD, for 8 years. In 2021, after things slowly started going back to normal from the pandemic. Fun fact, my beta reader, originally I said when things went back to normal. She circled it and said, back to normal from what? And I was like, really? Like, I have to explain to people in my book, like, do you not remember what happened in 2020, lady? Do I have to explain that in my own book? Like, okay. So I put the pandemic in. Also, the woman was hellbent on thinking that the book took place in 2021 just because of this particular scene. He was practically doing the work of a detective anyway. Oh yeah, he became a detective rather than a regular beat cop. He was practically doing the work of a detective anyway, so he figured it was time to move up the ladder. Cole was one of those people that brought work home with him and sometimes detached himself from when it proved difficult. Oh, I noticed a mistake. It's okay. He lived alone in a studio apartment, which fit his bachelor status and his casual lifestyle. When he wasn't being a detective working for a crazy amount of hours, he usually enjoys watching movies, art, and just a quiet time at home. In many ways, Koval was just a typical Atlantic City citizen. and in many ways he wasn't. He was a friendly and outgoing guy, but what really made him stand out was he was a brilliant detective, the type of detective that gave a damn about people's well-being after the case. The way Koval looked at it was he would want someone to treat him with respect and decency. So why not start by giving it to others? His partner was Aaron Harden. Aaron stood at 5'7", with black hair and blue eyes. Harden was the quieter of the two, which isn't to say that he didn't talk, but he was very soft spoken. He had been a detective for 6 years, and during that time, he had gotten married and settled into a new home in Atlantic City. He and Koval worked together and had formed a friendship outside of it. The place they now occupied, in the site of the crime scene, was Nightshade Station, a subway station worse looking than a New York City subway station, which was saying something. Graffiti was prominent throughout the once Art Deco looking wall tiles. Some of the black spray paint used looked like a Rorschach ink blot, something a hippie with violent Vietnam flashbacks claimed he saw and took his frustrations out on the wall. The concrete ground has enough cracks in it to make a plumber blush, and the flickering light fixtures high above likely hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. The bathroom wasn't any better. Yeah, the bathroom wasn't any better. It looked like a bathroom you'd have seen in a grungy 90s dance club, with odd colored walls and many questionable white powder substances sprinkled throughout, along with broken pipes and syringes used to shoot dope floating in the toilets. The walls and stall doors were so filthy that if someone dared to use a blacklight, it would make their skin crawl and the light would possibly break from its findings. The tracks were the only solid-looking thing within the whole underground transportation area, but too had just been tainted. However, the place wasn't always so gruesome looking. Nightshade Station was built in 1967, while there were already at least two functioning subway stations. Nightshade Station was supposed to be one of the premier transportation structures in all of the United States. The subway goes through Manhattan and other big New York cities before stopping in Atlantic City. The route was supposed to be from New York through New Jersey and Pennsylvania all the way to Miami, Florida. But such high dreams never became a reality. When the first issue of A Fire took place in 1971, it set off a chain of events that would eventually put the place on the map, for far worse reasons. A few subway collisions in the 70s, followed by a spike of crimes in the 80s, saw the place fall into utter decay. By the 90s, the place sunk further into disrepair and had developed a reputation of being a place that you could use to travel, but didn't dare stay at longer than you needed to. Nightshade Station was supposed to be the mecca of all subway stations, and instead, it was like a rundown 60-year-old hooker that should have retired years ago and smokes a pack of Newports a day through the hole in her neck. A place where wanton wanderers were a subterfuge of violent indignations that regurgitated their infernal prayers onto the dirty concrete. It was supposed to be looked at as the brother of Grand Central Station, but was more like Fredo to Michael Corleone, a brother given the reins to a small taste of luxury, only to go against the family and fuck it up in the end. This is Nightshade Station, a gloomy underground pariah, forever doomed by its own faults. Figured I'd leave it off with that last amazing paragraph, if I do say so myself. I love writing that paragraph. It's like one of the first things I remembered when I started writing it again. I was like, oh, I have to put in that Godfather line. uh, so yeah, that's a little bit of Nightshade Station. There are 15 chapters, and for anybody that knows or has any of my other books, you'll know that I tend to not write any more than 12 to 14 chapters. Why is this? There's no logical explanation for it other than I just like a happy little 12 to 14 chapters. Little random fact, there's a girl on Goodreads. There's a woman on Goodreads, excuse me. She's working on a book, How to Create a Monster. I think that's the name of it. And she's already up to chapter 130. And she's been doing this for like 3 years. I finally went to her thread and commented. I'm like, when are you going to finish this book. And she's like, I'm just going to keep writing until I can't write anymore. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go back to my writing and write my 12 to 15 chapter books. Have a nice day. Can you imagine, like, 130 chapters? My God. The cover. You know who did this beautiful cover? Huh? You know who did this beautiful cover? I think you know where I'm going with this. I did. It's the first cover I've ever done. And again, because the book was supposed to be permanently free, I thought, well, if the book's going to be free, then why should I put money into making a cover and having someone do a cover for me? That's just my mindset. But then when I decided that the book was not going to be permanently free, I also decided, you know what? I should at least learn how to make my own covers. So that way, not only to just save money, but also I might have some cool ideas for my book that I want to try myself. That's totally normal, right? Also, I'm a bit of a book cover novice. Not novelist, novice. The amount of covers, sometimes I will go to like Amazon. I'll be on Amazon, or I'll be on other book cover websites, and I'll just notice the awful work. But I'm not gonna divulge on that. This is a happy day. Nightshade Station. Again, here's the cover, and I already know that if I show this book on certain groups on Facebook, that they'll be like, what's the genre of this book? It's a crime thriller. Crime thrillers are usually blue. I don't care. Why is your book green? Because it's just the way that it happened. And green's my favorite color. And it works well, and it works nice, and it's a beautiful cover. Don't shit on it, lady. There's one person in particular on a Facebook group. Every time I post something, this woman, always the first to comment, always negative. So finally I was just like, you know what? I don't need to see your posts on my stuff anymore. Look. Because when I was making this cover, I had come up with some original concepts, which I think some people may remember. I couldn't use them legally because the guy that I tried to get them from never wrote me back. I wrote to him on his website, and I wrote to him on Instagram, reaching out saying, hey, I love your art. Can I use your book? Can I use your art for my book cover? He never got back to me, which is weird because he even says that he allows people to use his work. Never heard back from him. So one of those covers was it wasn't this one. It was I'm trying to think. It might have been like it might have been like a light blue, not dark blue, because dark blue kind of is crime thriller. It was like a light blue. It kind of had like trim, like fancy. Yeah, because I liked that, And immediately that woman was like, I don't think that's not the right that's not the right color for a crime thriller. Also, why is there trim in the corners? And I was like, lady, listen, I'm not writing this book for you. I'm writing this book for anyone that likes crime thrillers, that appreciates the beautiful cover, and I'm writing this for myself. So, can it? So basically, I created this cover using, I believe I was on Canva, and I also went to a couple of other websites that allowed me to use, I purchased, I think the character. I purchased a couple of the guy that's in there. I purchased him, and I had a couple of other concepts, but I think I lost them on the computer unless they're saved to that USB. But for like $1, and I got like 5 images for $1. So I was like, all right, well that works. So one thing I also want to mention, just briefly, One thing that I was actually asked about years ago was, do you include people that you know in your books? Most of the time, I would always say no. And it wasn't until like I had come across when I wanted to write Opium Warfare that when I was writing Opium Warfare, I decided to include a character that was based off of someone I knew. So in this book, particularly, this book actually has two people in it that I actually know personally. Um, so the characters of Selena, Declan's girlfriend, and Ariana, the subway artist, are actually they're in this book, and I actually know them. I'm actually friends with them. So I remember it was just a nice gesture that I wanted to do for them because they've been so kind and so nice to me. And yeah, so I hope that they'll read the book and they'll see how I portray them in the book, which I think is doing them justice. So again, Nightshade Station is my 13th novel. If you had told me years ago that I would publish my 13th novel in 2025, I'd have called you absolutely crazy. But here we are, right? Here we are. I do just want to mention that yeah, I didn't have a good turn. I had my loyal and trusty best friend over here on Instagram that watched. I do appreciate you for tuning in and watching. Much appreciated. I believe somebody else was on Facebook earlier. To that person, whoever you are, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I was kind of hoping for a better turnout, but I expected to get 0 people, but I got 2, so I will take it. In conclusion, I believe in this book. I worked hard on it, and it tells a very psychological, diabolical, and just sinister story about one detective's slow descent into the madness that is Nightshade Station as he tries to solve the crime of not only the 3 people jumping off the platform of Nightshade Station, but other deaths that follow. How many deaths follow afterwards? You'll just have to read the book to find out. One thing I do want to address, not that anyone is going to ask me, not that I hadn't already thought of it, is Nightshade Station going to be the first book in a series? As of right now, no. Because like I told you at the beginning, I have my next 20 books planned out. And none of them are going to be a sequel to Nightshade Station. I do have a series in mind in which I am thinking of bringing Declan Colville back. But I'm still not sure, and that's like 2 or 3 series away. How many books away is it, Justin? You really don't want to know. But we're not going to talk about books that haven't been written yet. We're talking about the latest one that has Nightshade Station, now available on Amazon Kindle. I don't know if it's available on paperback yet because I hit publish at midnight. So Amazon, you said 72 hours, but you don't need that much time. You don't need it. It's good. It's good to go. So yeah. Thank you again to the 2 people that did watch, and thank you to those that do watch us on the playback. If you have any questions for me about the book, please don't hesitate to reach out and message me. And I do hope you will go out and get yourselves a copy, either paperback when it's available or on Kindle. I am sorry to those of you that do audiobook. I don't do audiobook just because of conflicting interests between me and the companies. I'm hoping to change that in the future if it ever comes and happens. But yeah, so Nightshade Station now available. Nightshade Station. Now available on Amazon. Get your copy. Get your copy now, and I hope you enjoy it. And it has been an hour, so I am going to close this video for now. Thank you again, and I will be back at 7 o'clock, and we're gonna do this again. But yeah, obviously I'm just gonna go over the same information. So for those that didn't get to watch it at 2 o'clock. So again, thank you for those that watched, and once again, this has been Justin Bienvenue for the